So I think I've found the ultimate varnish and the best way to apply it. Stick around. All right, welcome to the shop here in beautiful downtown Canterbury. It's a beautiful night and we're so glad that you chose to tune in.
Yes, we are.
Is the camera lady ever present behind the camera, chiming in?
It's a real privilege to have you here with all of us.
But tonight, I wanted to follow up on last week's session where we compared the merits of shellac and varnish. And also we talked about stains a little bit. And as I was puzzling about trying to decide whether or not to stain and how to finish the cherry settee project, which I'm going to reveal in just a few minutes, but I wanted to first talk about what I'm discovering here with varnish. I have to tell you that I have had kind of a love-hate relationship with varnishes over the past 35 years. They were the first finishes that I ever used. I remember in the basement in my house, my tenement house, the dirt basement on 21 Dover Street in Lowell, Massachusetts. Those were the days. Brushing out finishes on pine boards that were soon to shrink and gap, and I couldn't understand why. And when I brushed them out, inevitably, I would get all kinds of dust on those finishes, and it was so annoying. Spar varnishes were my first that I ever brushed out. Didn't have a clue what was going on, but I was told they would work well, and the guys at the lumberyard were right. They did work pretty well. But as time's gone on, I've played around with other varnishes and found that they all have certain qualities. Now, I'm talking about oil varnishes here. I know there's other varnishes. Actually, shellac is a varnish. It's often referred to as a spirit varnish. That's what it used to be called because it would evaporate off so quickly. The alcohol would flash off and it would just spirit off. And you're left with this beautiful film hardening on the surface. But we're talking about oil varnishes which cure over a much longer period of time. Usually, anywhere from 12 to 24 hours, depending on conditions and the thickness of the coat. So I have played around with varnishes and found that my favorites in recent years have been polymerized tung oil varnishes. Mostly for the quality of the appearance and the ability to rub out the finish. We've had other videos where I've explained this technique of rubbing out the finish. And if you go back and watch those, we'll have to put a link. I forgot to mention that to the camera lady. We'll put a link to one of those where I'm rubbing out a fine finish. And it can be a frustrating experience. One of the worst things that happens when you're rubbing out a finish is you're first leveling it with a very fine sandpaper, something like this, like a 1200 grit with a felt block, and you'll be sanding on that varnish surface just to level it out before you can start bringing the sheen up higher. And when you're doing that, it's not uncommon to rub through or to actually sand through the layer of varnish. Now, not all the way through to the wood, just the next layer of varnish. And what's so frustrating about that is it shows. It's like just that one cut into the next layer turns into this like halo on the surface that you can't get rid of unless you brush on another coat and wait another 6 or 7 days before it's really ready to rub out. So it was really frustrating, especially when you're feeling a time crunch or need to pay the mortgage. That's how fun it was in those early days.
That was real.
It was real. And so those polymerized tung oil varnishes, though, were beautiful, though, for because they rubbed out so nicely. You could rub them up to brighter sheens after you leveled them, and you had this elegant, silky, smooth top that had just a soft gloss, like a soft gloss on these tabletops. I used to use it a lot on these demi-lunes and card tables that I made, and it was just beautiful. Fast forward, getting away from that, I got into spraying varnishes or lacquers, and then conversion lacquers, and I don't go back to that brushing experience that often these days because of the time-consuming nature and frustration and all that. But I do love using the varnishes on other pieces that are not flat and don't necessarily need to be rubbed out in the same way. This round chair is treated with a polymerized tung oil, or it was Waterlock's, a type of polymerized tung oil. When I used this one, I wiped on the Waterlock's finish. Now, since then, I've shared with you that I've come across what I consider to be a finer, more pure polymerized tung oil based varnish, and that's from Sutherland Wells. I pursued them because I heard about their products from others and from some reading that this was the real deal, where the Waterlocks, although it's a really fine varnish, they've made some compromises in the resins that are in there. It's not as high quality as the Sutherland Wells. So take that for what it's worth. They're not a sponsor. We do have like an affiliate program with them. So do we make a little money? I don't even know if we make anything on that.
I don't even know.
That's how big it is.
There's a code for you to get a discount. Is more.
Yeah, there's a discount for you.
In the description below. We might get a kick. I don't know. We haven't gotten one yet, but I don't know.
Yeah, it's just save your discount though, because you get to use it one time. If you do like the products, you get to use it once. So you could get some samples the first time and pay for them like without the discount. And then if you're going to put a larger there's Dover Street, larger order. If you're going to put a larger order in, you're going to use your code and then get the full 10% off for that. Okay, so there you go. So this was wiped on Waterlocks. I wiped it on like with a pad. I just took like a paper towel, but these are superior to paper towels, these blue towels, because they don't shed. They don't shed those little lint particles, or, it's like lint. So all I did was dip this into a little Waterlocks and wiped it on and just left a nice film on there. So it was pretty shiny, and then I came back. So it built up pretty fast. I think this is just like 3 coats of it, putting it on that way. And the last one I just sort of rubbed out with steel wool, like a fine 4/0 steel wool, and then buffed it up. And that worked out really well. So I like that finish a lot, but I was trying out a little different approach on the settee that we talked about last week. And I'm going to show you that settee right now. Excuse me. It's under this blanket. All right, so we've got it upholstered, and I've got 5 coats of finish on it in the method I'm about to show you. I'm going to probably put one more, but this does have pretty much the look. What do you think of that?
Beautiful. I haven't seen it yet. That's awesome.
Oh, you hadn't seen it?
Well, I mean, I saw it on the thumbnail.
Oh,
but
that's right, the photo, yeah. I wish you could feel this, how smooth and silky it is, and I haven't even rubbed it out. Can you get it where you can glance off the finish and see the soft sheen of it? Are you able to pick that up? I don't know with the light if you can actually see it.
It's pretty green though.
But I'm looking at the way the light's reflecting, and it's just got like the minimal surface cover, and it's got a soft glow to it. Beautiful feeling to it. You just want to touch it. You know, it's really nice. And this was what we decided last week. I decided, based on the color and quality of that cherry, as you may have followed along, if you want, you could check that video out. It was shellac versus tung oil is the name of it. But I didn't want to stain it. I wanted to go pure right on the wood with the oil varnish, and it just really worked. I love the color. It's not quite as deep as the round chair. If you look at the difference here, this is not exactly apples to apples because this is a different cherry, but can you see like that back leg or even the, let me put it, I don't know if it shows up that well, does it?
Really similar.
It looks pretty similar, but actually this has a deeper color, especially I'm seeing it on the arms. Let me put it like this. Can you see it on the arms, how this just looks lighter, and it's going to warm up and deepen and darken. Over about a year's time, it'll get pretty close to its full patina and depth of color. So it looks great. And we chose, I worked with a local upholsterer this time, Marianne Quinn, who's awesome. And she helped us out, David Lamb and I. Let me quickly tell you the backstory. David Lamb made this, called it the Exquisite Settee class this summer. He taught it twice, and 6 students were here, and each made their own truly exquisite settee. And so David was making one along with it. He ended up with 2 after the end of the summer, and he decided to finish it out, glue it up, and sand it up, and then I would take it and finish it, take care of getting the upholstery and all that, and we're going to donate it together to the Furniture Masters auction. We're having a reception for the New Hampshire Furniture Masters 30th anniversary on October 9th. If you're in the area and you can go, it's going to be cool. It's 7, is it a 7 o'clock?
6 to 8.
Oh, that's
on
yeah.
October 9th at the Courier Museum in Manchester, New Hampshire. Courier.org or FurnitureMasters.org. Either of those places you can get tickets.
Yeah, and it's going to be nice. Really, it's beautiful being in the museum setting. This, among other silent auction pieces, much smaller. Most are going to be in the $200 to $500 value range, made by all different members of the New Hampshire Furniture Masters. So this is kind of an outlier. We don't usually donate pieces of this type of value. So we're going to promote this a little bit. And who knows, given that we're not having a major auction that night of significantly large pieces, it's more of just an exhibit of some of the pieces on display. This might go pretty well. Who knows? I will keep you posted. If you're not able to be there, I'll give you the results of what it got in the silent auction and all that. Especially if you took the course, you might want to know what you got there. You might have a real jewel.
That's right.
Of course.
We had 2 of those classes this summer.
Yeah.
So Tom, you're going to show us what you did, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm going to show you the process. I just want to finish showing you this. This is the upholstered seat frame. So this is a 2.5 inch 2.5 inch wide cutout. I think I showed it last time, didn't I? And it's a 1/2 inch like Baltic birch ply that is covered, and it's got webbing on top. And then, wow, she did a really nice job. She's just right around the corner, I think less than a mile from our house, right up on Baptist Hill Road. Marianne Quinn. Anyway, this is a stria fabric, a velvet stria, or stria velvet, I'm not sure what she calls it. And I thought it was a velour, but it has a grain to it. So if you want to position it for best effect, I'll turn it this way and see how much lighter it looks.
Oh, yeah.
The grain is laying away from you right now. So light is bouncing off the fibers or hairs. It's almost like grain in a board. Then when we turn it, coming back to you, now the hairs are facing into the light. So you're not getting as much of a bounce of light, and you get a better color. So when we like to display this, we lay it in that way, and we'll be showing it from the grain laying toward you and then brushing it in that direction. This is also true with Oriental carpets. I learned that they have a grain and they usually face them for richest color, with the grain facing toward the most used room. All right, so I really like that seat. It's really super comfortable and it worked out great. So let me show you, I'm just gonna talk about, it's hard for me to obviously take you through all the processes of this, but the finish method that I used on this bench was the Maloof type finish. So the approach of applying it, I'm using the Southern & Wells wiping varnish, medium luster, if you're interested in that, okay? The pure polymerized medium luster here. So when I buy a quart like this, they're not cheap. I mean, this stuff, I guess it's like $40, maybe more a quart, but it goes a long way, okay? You can buy 4-ounce samples for like 15 bucks, but this, in order to save it, like if you just leave it in the can, if there's too much air in the can, it will oxidize and gel up. So some of you have seen me do this before. I like buying these 4-ounce mason jars, which have a good seal to them, and filling them up as high as I can, like this one. You can see this just has a little bubble in it. That's all the oxygen in that jar. So what I'll do is, once I open the can and use some, rather than sealing it back in the can that has usually a lot of air in there, I'll just subdivide it into as many of these 4-ounce jars as I can and lock them in. And then it'll stay a long time as long as you don't get oxygen in that jar. And so I'm just using one jar at a time. And if something goes wrong and it does gel up on me and dry out, I've only lost a couple ounces rather than the whole can. So that's a good way to go when it comes to that expensive stuff. Now, so when applying this, I decided, it was kind of an epiphany. You may have watched that live stream we did in Sam Maloof's shop. I think he shared it to me live I was talking about the finish with Mike Johnson, who was his apprentice, and we were looking at 3 of these Maloof rockers and talking about the finish on each. And he said they just wipe on 6 coats of Sam's famous varnish, which was basically linseed oil, polyurethane, and turpentine. I think it was turpentine, or thinner. I think they used turpentine though. And I think it was a third or something like that. Regardless, it's a secret recipe, but a lot of people know it. He published it in Fine Woodworking. If you want to find out for sure, you can go back and look at some of those early issues if you have them. But Mike said, I'm looking at this beautiful glowing furniture that looks so rich, and I could see the finish. He said, oh, we just wipe on and wipe off 6 times. And I'm thinking, geez, I've never done that. What do you mean wipe off? He's like, no, we take a rag after we've put it on, we wipe it all off. He said, we don't leave any on. And I'm like, well, of course I didn't want to argue. Well, you're leaving some on. But what he meant was, of course he's leaving some on, but you're leaving it on almost like if you polish the top of a piece of furniture, you would spray your little mist of polish, right? And then you wipe it and you feel you're pushing around liquid. Now it's slippery and you just flip the rag or whatever, you're wiping it. But when you're done, it's glowing and it looks partially wet, but you've left like a very thin oil layer on there, okay? That's the best way I can think of it. Describing it is as if you're polishing on, you're wiping it off, all right? This goes slowly, but you're only putting on a little. So it seems counterproductive because you brush it on, then you're wiping it off. But you're leaving just that film. And that's what gives you the control. And what the beauty of this is that yes, it takes a few more coats than maybe like on my round chair I just showed you. I think that's only 3 coats because I was just patting it on thicker. I wasn't wiping it on after. But the beauty is that there's no real rubbing out at the end. It's done. When you buff it off, it's like you're polishing it at the end and then you let it dry. And you may come after, and very lightly hit it with some very fine paper to knock any nubs off where you might have left it a little heavy. But that's it. And it feels gorgeous. Like this is 5 coats. So I'm just thinking one more. And I wish you could feel and see how there's a beautiful sheen on these legs. And it feels really well covered. And it was so easy to apply. Now, putting a coat like that on here, I'm going to show you a little bit more on a sample board. It goes on, I just quickly brush it on very thinly, and then I wipe it off. And brushing it on and wiping off took 20 minutes. I timed myself on the last coat I did, and it was no stress, You're not worrying about drips and sags because you're wiping it off, okay? So if you've got the days, it's really nice. You don't have to rub out with steel wool at the end or anything like that. So let me just show you, I'll show you how much and how I wipe it off and everything just on these sample boards. Last week I used these samples for you to show you, and I couldn't remember. One of them I knew I brushed 2 with shellac, and then I brushed 2 wiped on the oil varnish, the same polymerized tung oil, and I couldn't remember which because they're so thin. They look very similar. I didn't get enough finish on to really distinguish. So one of the tricks you can use, and this is also used in identifying finish on antique furniture, is you can take some denatured alcohol. I'm going to use, usually you can dip like a Q-tip into denatured alcohol and just let it, put a little drop or some denatured alcohol right on the board, like that. And you would give it some time, and the denatured alcohol will do nothing to the oil varnish, but it'll start to melt in on the shellac. So I did this earlier just to find out, and then I thought I probably should show you that, because that actually is a great technique when you're trying to restore an old piece. Like a lot of these old pieces, you want to know, is that lacquer or is it denatured alcohol? Or is it shellac? Some of these older pieces. I usually will put shellac on it because shellac won't melt the lacquer. The denatured alcohol won't melt the lacquer, but it will melt into the shellac finish, and then All right, I can see in the light that this is flashed off, and I can see it's dull, and I'm feeling a little stickiness right there. Okay, this is the shellac. Has to be. I'm feeling no stickiness over here where it evaporated off. Just feels exactly like the rest of the board. So that's my shellac. I want to then use this sample to show you. These are also, I know these are oil. I'll just show you how easy this is and how I actually wiped it off. Okay, so I'll put on my glove. I'm going to be Michael Jackson tonight because I only could find one. Ow!
Oh my gosh.
Sorry. What a
Okay,
jerk.
hon. One's better than none.
All right. I could have been more embarrassing there, right? If I pulled the true Michael Jackson move.
Yeah.
All right. I've got the 1200 grit wet dry paper. I'm just going to very lightly hit this. This has only been saturated with the first coat, okay? So I usually will lightly hit after the first coat takes the longest because you're going to let that stay on the surface for like 5 or 10 minutes. It's on the raw wood and it's soaking in. That oil is penetrating pretty nicely and it's going to bring up the full color and all that. And then you're going to wipe it all off, right? So there's nothing really left except what's saturated in. The second coat, as you'll see here in a minute, doesn't saturate in because you've already sealed it with that first one. And after you've done that, it takes very little finish to apply it. Now, this is the way I keep my brush between coats. Like, you don't want to keep washing your brush. So I rinse it in a little, it's a little yogurt cup over there with some mineral spirits, and then I'll squeeze it out, and then I just wrap some plastic around it, shrink wrap, and that keeps your brush nice and fresh. As long as you don't let it dry out, it stays pretty good, rather than leaving it just dipped in the thinner the whole time. So I'll just take some of that extra moisture off, and then we'll go with our finish. So this is the one I was using, but I was dumping it into a smaller cup here. And to do that whole bench, I was literally dumping, whoops, wrong one. I didn't want to open that one. That's my really full one. All right, you can see how full it is. I gotta clean that up a bit.
How much finish did it take to do that whole settee, Tom?
I'll bet you I barely have 4 ounces on there. Maybe it's the first one that takes the most because it's soaking in somewhat, right? As you go around. I'm going to show you how much I used on each successive coat. Like this is what's left from brushing out the last one. And all I did was put in like a tiny little bit. Oh, well, you know what? This was full when I started. So I got 2 ounces. I used 2 ounces, probably like 4 ounces tops.
Wow.
Okay. So I would just pour a little bit like this, because once you've got it sealed initially, you're putting on this much. I just took the brush and I wasn't really dipping it. I was just dipping the frayed ends in there, and just so I could get it on there that much, I'm just wetting the surface. I didn't want to brush a hole because I know I'm wiping it off, right? There's no need to put a ton on there. I was just putting on enough that I could see it was fully wet. So I'll just hit all these. These are all oil. And you'd be surprised how fast you can do that on that piece. I was just over here, I had it flipped upside down first, and I just come up on, hit everything really fast on here and move right around and just cover everything so it was wet. And once I had the whole thing wet, I would wipe it down, and I'll show you how that goes. So that's it. You're going to put it on, just wet it. You could pat it on, obviously, with a rag, but I just found it easier to go around with the brush because I had a lot of little spots to get in, especially around those cutaways. And then you're just going to take a rag, and I was using the blue ones, and here it is. It's wet. This one's.
That's about how long you wait?
That one I'm not sure if I sealed it because it's soaking in. That one may never have been sealed. These are all still look really wet. Okay, I know I oiled this one. What am I talking about?
How long did you wait? About that amount of time?
Well, I brushed over the whole thing. I'm not worrying about it drying. So when I got it all done, then I went back to where I started. And so it might have been, 5-10 minutes at the most?
Okay.
And then I took the blue rag and I just went and wiped it off like that. This is what I'm saying. It is so easy. And there's nothing on it. It's almost like I just put a polish on there, right? There's no surface film except for the micro sheen that you left on there. It looks wet, but not wet wet. It just looks like you left a little surface film. That's it, okay? That's all you got to do. And so that's like six times. So the beauty of this is you don't have to worry about brush marks. It dries fast and effectively, and it's really foolproof. You don't have to worry about rubbing it out at the end either. So thank you, Mike Johnson out there at Sam Maloof's. That's what they did 6 times, you know, and they would get this beautiful finish. I wouldn't do it on all pieces. I mean, you know, if you got a dining top or something, you want a little more of a build. So in those cases, I would leave a more of a film on there, more protective, right? But even then, I think you could do this numerous times. I know the Nakashima use a blend. They actually use Mira Nakashima now, who runs that. She buys her tung oil from Sutherland Wells, and she uses this wiping varnish in combination, I believe, with the genuine, just the natural polymerized tung oil, the full-on. They're very similar products, but you can mix them, and most of their products you can mix and match.
And how long between coats?
I was going a day, you know. I've only got 5 coats on here because the camera lady, I had a nice 3-day weekend away.
Yeah, it was wonderful.
We were tired, and a friend was very kind to give us this little cabin on the lake up in Lake Winnipesaukee.
It was great.
So we just had a wonderful time, and
so would you say that this that Sam Maloof's method emulates a French polish in slow motion?
not exactly. It does. It looks something like it, but a French polish is shellac, and it builds like a different type of film. It's this oil varnish, to me, it's noticeable, like it has this warm, very like Danish oil look to it. Like what's great about it is it feels protected and elegant, and it's close to the wood. You're not building up a big surface film. If you want to build up a surface film, you can simply brush it on, you know, like this. Like this is the way, you know, you could brush it on or wipe it on, and this levels out really nicely. So they tell you with this, you can brush it on, and then it'll just flow out, and you'll end up with a thicker film. So I have this sample board. This is a different type of varnish, but it is a varnish just the same. And this is brushed on over, like down in this. This is a gloss. I think it's a Pratt & Lambert varnish, brushed on over seal coat. So, but see that sheen and that thickness? You know what I'm talking about. That's a build. That has a stronger build that you can leave alone, or it's going to get dust in it and all that mess, and you're going to have to maybe rub it out, you know, to change the sheen or to smooth out any dust nibs on there as it cured. So that's more of a build finish, and that's going to be the brushing or the wiping varnish. What I'm talking about is that easiest of methods where you're wiping it off. Okay, so this I could leave and it would cure, and then I'd have to really definitely lightly sand between coats. And the Sutherland Wells, their instructions do give you a lot of ideas about that. One of the things they mention on the can that I was interested to see is to refresh a finish, make sure all impurities are cleaned off there. Like if you had a varnish finish on there before, you can restore this finish so easily too. You would just very lightly go over it, lightly sand it with like 400 grit or 600, 800, whatever. And then you just do the method I just showed you, where you brush or wipe it on and then wipe it off. It's like you're polishing it and you're leaving a micro film on there. So this is fairly new, as you're seeing. I I had not a lot of reason to apply this type of finish. I was usually looking for a film finish. To finish the question about the French polishing, shellac is built in micro layers. It is actually similar, but shellac is a different kind of resin. Because of its alcohol, it flashes off so fast that you're building these micro layers. And the beauty of shellac is that each successive layer is melting into the previous. And you end up with this really elegant, thin finish, but it's much glossier. But it's so thin. It's the ultimate, like, fine gloss finish. You've seen it. I think if you've seen, like, beautifully French polished furniture, it's really nice. This is similar, but I can still kind of feel like the wood is close. You know, it's not, you don't have the same film buildup that you do even with a shellac French polish.
Okay, I've got some questions for you.
Okay.
I'll try to do it in somewhat order.
Okay, and I'll try to answer them.
After the last coat, how long before the finish is fully cured?
Oh boy, that's a good one. Well, the nice thing about wiping this on like this, I have felt very confident, like after 24 hours, it feels really dry. They tell you with these finishes, like if you were patting them on, if you wipe your finger along it, and if it feels like it's sticking at all and it's not smooth and silky, then you got to let it go until it does feel smooth and silky. But most varnishes, you have like a cure time, but then it doesn't reach full properties of curing for another week or 2 weeks. And that's why when I would brush on the varnishes or the polymerized tung oil, you would literally have to wait a week for it to cure that to the right hardness so it would accept the rubbing compounds to get the right sheen. But yeah.
Did you say anything about whether or not you sand between coats?
Not with this method, but if you're putting on a thicker film, I always would lightly sand. If you're wiping it on, you can lightly sand. I usually use a 400 is the coarsest. I'd rather have like an 800 grit paper, like on something round or whatever. I think that's what I used on the round chair. You're just knocking off the dust nibs, the roughness in those rough places, and then you're wiping it down, and then you're wiping on another coat. With this, I did actually very lightly, I had some 1200 grit, and I folded it, and I did feel like up in here, I could feel a tiny bit of roughness, nothing like when you're normally putting it on. And so I did just very lightly hit, and I didn't change the sheen at all, and that was it. But I wiped it off. I mean, I can feel there's really nowhere to sand on this right now. So I just want to show you that after I had this fully wet, and of course the seat is not in there, I just got my hands, were each had gloves on there, and I just had one blue towel in each hand, and I just came over like this, and I was just wiping it off like this. And I could see that I was getting all the finish off, but I could still see like that little polish of a shine on there because it was leaving it behind. It's got the right consistency to be a wiping varnish. You know, you can wipe it on, and you can use this method where you wipe it off. It's really safe to build micro layers like that.
Sutherland Wells wipe on varnish, how does it compare to that?
How does what compare to that?
Okay, Tony's asking, how is this different from Sutherland Wells wipe on, which is also wipe on and wipe off? Do you know?
I didn't know they had a wipe on. This is wiping varnish. I'm not sure. Do they have a wipe on and a wiping varnish? This is wiping varnish. I think you might be referring to this.
Yeah.
But that's, you can wipe it on like in the pad and leave a thicker film. Like that's one way of wiping it on. But I'm talking about the wiping varnish in taking it off, like with these paper towels at the end, and just all I did was wipe off, and I could see this soft little polish of a sheen on there. And it's just great, you know.
Okay,
so
did you?
easy.
I heard you a moment ago just talk about sandpaper, 400, 800. The question I have here is, what grit did you use before the 1200 grit
On what?
on the settee? I assume.
Oh, it was initially sanded to 320 on the wood. The wood was sanded to 320. That's another excellent property of this finish, is that because it's an oil varnish, you don't have to raise the grain. I didn't put any water-based stain on there or anything, so I was able to go right on the piece. So there was no like grain raised areas or anything like that. It's super easy to apply. It's very water protective. Polymerized tung oil is excellent against moisture, and it's really easy to repair. As I said, you would very lightly sand it with a fine paper and wipe on another coat.
So that would help with water rings. What you're saying?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. It won't. You won't get them.
Okay.
I mean, if you have a good coat on there, I've had polymerized tung oil varnish on a bed stand next to the bed, and in the summer, you know, sometimes you forget, you put a cold glass of water in there, you wake up and there's a puddle of water around the base. No water rings.
Tony says the same thing. It's the same thing. He just says Southern Wells recommends wiping off after 20 minutes. So.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. So that's that's the technique I'm doing here. They have lots of great resources on their website. I'm not exactly sure there, but what's cool is the more durable varnishes they have on there. They have like a Murdoch line, and then they have floor finishes. They're adding increasingly higher percentages of high quality urethane. So you're mimicking almost like a Sam Maloof finish then. So when you get into that Murdoch line, wiping on, wiping off, you're going to get more of a Maloof type finish. This is the same approach, but using a pure like polymerized tung oil method. So
would you use this finish on walnut?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. In fact, that's what some of the best pieces of Nakashima, George Nakashima, famous for the original slab table man, he would just wipe on successive coats, and they would thin this back. And I don't know, I think a friend of mine told me they would wipe on close to 10 coats of this, you know, because it was thinned out even more. You can thin it out a little with mineral spirits and go more coats. But if you're going on like a top of a table, that's when it's just so controllable, right? You're just wiping it on, and then you could go after and just wipe it off, and it just looks great. And you're adding these micro, it takes longer, but you have the reassurance that you're controlling it to have one of the most elegant, beautifully protected, rich finishes that are repairable.
And would you use this method of application with water locks?
Yeah, the same thing. Yeah, the water locks. I would thin it down a little. So these polymerized tung oils, by the way, this is the medium luster. It's a 50-50. That means it's 50% resin, tung oil, and 50% thinner. So you can add thinner to these and thin them out a little bit more. You can buy the gloss, which is a higher percentage resin to thinner, and thin it out and create your own medium luster. You can ask them a lot of questions. Very helpful, like, and informative about their products on that, I've noticed on the website. And they have a number of videos, really good instructions about the various products if you're interested in getting some.
Any thoughts on how you'd compare Sutherland Wells to General Finishes Armor Seal?
Oh, I like, as many of you know, I really like the Armor Seal. I used it on our kitchen counter, and we've been using that for
Awesome.
at least 2 years. And brushed it on, and it leveled out beautifully. It has really nice consistency. that has urethane in it. So that would be comparable to the Sutherland & Wells Murdoch line of finishes, which is the polymerized tung oil with urethane. Now, the General Finishes Armor Seal is I believe it's an alkyd varnish, which is, it's chemically, is it alcohol and acid or some type of chemical reaction, and it creates a resin. So that has been used in paints for years and years, but it's that and the urethane. So it's beautiful and very protective. The urethane is it's really a tougher finish than the tung oil alone. But when you get to that toughness, you start to get that hardness and maybe more of a glossy, plasticky feel, which it was known for. That's why Maloof thinned his back. He cut his urethane with linseed oil instead of tung oil. Okay, so very similar mix actually to some of these Murdoch lines, but you can go with that if you like. Yeah.
Okay, a few more questions. So how is this different to Danish oil that contains tung oil and pure polyurethane?
Danish oil, is thinner, not as water protective. I'm talking about what you buy as just pure Danish oil. If you can wipe it on and wipe it off just in the same way. It's thin, it's easy to use, it's really a great finish for a lot of applications, but it's notoriously not as water protective as this. But I didn't, were you asking the question like to contrast?
Yes, with our, how is this different to Danish oil that contains tung oil and polyurethane?
That contains tung oil and polyurethane? Mm-hmm. Well, you're just talking about a varnish blend. You're basically describing Sutherland Wells. All right, tung oil and polyurethane is sort of like the Murdoch line of Sutherland Wells. So that's the cool thing is you can mix these resins. They're compatible, many of them, into a varnish, an oil varnish. So these alkyd resins, which are fairly soft, nice rub-outable varnishes, or tung oil, or linseed oil, or with urethanes usually, to add the toughness and hardness. So it cuts the hardness of the urethane a little bit, makes it a more elegant finish. That's why the Armor Seal is pretty nice. Yeah.
Okay, I've got a couple more questions that have been here for a little bit. So Rich says, I took a class last week and learned how to apply. A question I forgot to ask was what material the cloth was we used to apply the finish. It almost looked like a very fine burlap. And then he followed up and said, what do you use to apply shellac?
Say that again about the class he took?
Yeah, he took a class. He forgot to ask what the material was that they used to apply the finish. He said it was almost like a very fine burlap. Do you know what that would have been?
Oh,
could have been burlap, right?
Well, not burlap isn't used. It could have been like a linen or something like that. These are fine to apply. These feel thicker and more durable. These would be great. In fact, on Sutherland Wells' website, they recommend patting on and applying your varnishes with these because they don't leave lint behind.
Cheesecloth, Dave's suggesting maybe it was.
Yeah, cheesecloth is very porous, but yeah, it might have been something like that. But what was the question?
The second was what you use to apply shellac.
To apply it, usually I'm spraying it if I can, or you can brush it on. But I prefer mostly to spray, especially if you're doing a chair or something like that with a lot of angles and places for drips. And I've done some videos on using shellac and spraying, using a spray gun as well. So maybe you could check those out. We can link to
Okay,
some.
I'm going to use this as the last question. Leonard says, I used to use pumice and rotten stone to rub out varnish. Is that still used?
Sure, I mean, I did too. That's what I did, Leonard, on those early tables. I would go through like the 2F, 4F, and then rotten stone if you wanted a higher sheen. On polymerized tung oil, it was that time it was sold by J.E. Moser company, and great polymerized tung oil too, but I don't know what happened to them. And but yeah, since then I've started using compounds, premixed compounds, which basically are the same thing. If you can get like the 3M series, you can get different grits. The pumice and the finer grits of Rottenstone are in suspension, in like the waxy liquid solution. So there's no like mixing, you just squirt it. And I did do a video where I demonstrated those one time where we brought the sheen up on a tabletop using those finishes.
I'm going to give you one more that just came in, okay?
Okay.
What about a coat or two of shellac under the varnish, then a final coat of armor seal?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, that's what this sample I showed actually is. There's 2 coats of shellac. Now it's important that it's wax-free shellac. So these coats are actually the seal coat product of Zinsser, wax-free shellac. You can mix your own, but it has to be wax-free. And then, yes, of course, you can put varnishes over the top. We talked about that last week, that's especially good if you want to reduce the potential for the cherry to blotch. Like you can seal the cherry and then go over the top. Because that's like a very compatible seal coat for underneath any kinds of finishes. So yeah, absolutely. You can definitely do that as well. Here I wanted to put the oil straight on the cherry to bring out the maximum rich color over time. So, all right, everyone. Wow. That's the real world of this. And I hope you enjoyed that this can be the ultimate varnish by applying it in that method. But of course, there's lots of varnishes and approaches. For particular situations, you've got to choose the best one. I should recommend, if you're really interested in finishing and you haven't gotten Bob Flexner's book, this is sort of the Bible of wood finishing. It's called Understanding Wood Finishing by Bob Flexner. It helped me so much. I got when it first came out, like 30 years ago, and it just demystified so much because he gets into some of the chemical things and you realize how misleading a lot of the cans can be. So you can use that as a reference book.
I'll
it's
add
great.
a link to that.
All right, everyone. Well, thanks again for hanging out. Remember, if you like this content, please consider subscribing, liking, sharing, and checking out epicwoodworking.com. Also, remember the FurnitureMasters.org thing coming up. You can check out that website too to get some inspiration with a lot of makers. But if you want to make pieces like that round chair, we've got a class coming this week, but you can do it online. And you can actually buy the plans, the full-size drawings, and it's just real, live, no smoke and mirrors instruction. So thanks again for hanging out. On behalf of the camera lady and myself, we look forward to seeing you next time, right back here on Sharp Night Live. Good night, everybody.
Hope to see you next week. Take care. Thanks for being here.